Welcome to The Whole Pack, where we challenge black and white thinking and holistic pet care and dive into the controversial topics everyone's thinking about but nobody's saying out loud. I'm Sunny Gandera.
And I'm Melissa Sherman, and we are two holistic pet health practitioners here to prove that holistic care can include critical thinking, self-care, and yes, even Western medicine when needed. This is a judgment-free community we wish we'd had when we started our journey. Welcome. Today's guest is Dr. Carol Smea, co-founder of Mind Pet Platter. Carol holds a PhD in psychology and sociology and spent years working with food companies and government agencies on research related to nutrition and public health. Driven by her passion for animals, she later applied those same research and observational skills to understanding how dogs and cats naturally eat and interact with their food. I first met Carol at Dr. Judy's event in Orlando, and over the last several months, I've had an opportunity to get to know her a little better, and she's a pretty awesome woman. One of the things I really appreciate about her work is that she looks at feeding from the animal's perspective, and as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about how animals experience the world, that really resonated with me. Carol is a strong advocate for the idea of how we feed our animals is just as important as what we feed them. And today we're going to talk about trends in pet health care, what might be missing from the conversation, and where she sees the future of animal wellness heading. Carol, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Melissa and Sunny, I'm all ready for this conversation.
Great, awesome. Well, Carol, you are, as Melissa said, such a fascinating human being and have such a vast background and think about things very differently and more thoroughly, I think, than most of us. So I'm going to try. We're going to try to ask you questions that really highlight that. But you came into the pet health from a perspective of human eating behavior and food psychology. So what was the moment or the realization you had that, hey, this framework applies to animals too?
Well, it's really interesting because what sparked this whole notion was an experience with my own pet, Pip, my little 14-pound Havanese who was adorable and ruled the household, of course. But one day I was making chicken breast for her, and I was cutting it on a cutting board, and my daughter said, "Mom, don't throw that away, let Pip have it." So I put it down on the ground, and for the next 15 to 20 minutes, I saw eating behavior that I never saw from her. Usually she went to a bowl, inhaled her food literally in about 30 seconds, and would let out a belch that you think a 500-pound football player let out. I mean, if people were in my house, they'd have tears streaming down their eyes, like, what the heck was that? And so when I saw her behavior, when my late husband came home, I told him, and he said, "Oh my God, Eureka." So at that point in time, I was thinking, I studied what motivates people to eat, what are the barriers to eat, what are people's attitudes to eat. And there's one concept that I came up with when I was marketing for food companies, and that was nutritional schizophrenia. What people say they eat and what they actually eat are two entirely different things. So I started thinking about all the research that I did in the human world. And my husband said, "Okay, why don't you get into it for, dogs?" And so I took all my research skills and started off watching how wolves eat in the wild and volunteered at zoos. And it's fascinating. I mean, once you really observe not only your pet's eating behavior, but a wolf's eating behavior, you see the similarities. And you realize feeding from a bowl is counterproductive to who they are. So we've taken away the feeding ecology of carcass feeding and shoved it into a little area. And it's sort of like an analogy to us would be eating from a fast food container. You just sort of suck it up and you're done and you're hungry the next minute. And it's not very satisfying. So that led me down this journey that there are instinctive behaviors and physiology plays a role, how they're designed and how they're meant to eat.
Very fascinating.
Very fascinating. Is there anything specific that you observed through watching, the wild cats and wolves that you were able to see, oh my gosh, my dog should be eating like this, or I wonder if my dog would eat better if it was like this?
Absolutely. When you look at how our pets typically eat, they're done very quickly. They lay down by the side of the bowl and that's it. And yet in the wild, they spent over 90% of their time hunting, foraging, deconstructing carcasses, then eating, storing food, and all that was gone. And there's one particular story I really like that I actually have footage of. We used to give rabbits in certain sacks to the wolves, but we would tie it up in the sacks and then throw it in. And one day this wolf pup got one and smelled it, picked it up, and then I started to see all this interaction on how he was circling the sack and sort of pushing the other members of the family away, and how he was playing with it and engaging with it. And I said, this is the exact opposite of what we see with our pets when they're eating. So there are instinctive behaviors that take place. And even in the deconstruction, I oftentimes recommend go to a carcass feeding at a zoo if you really want to see instinctive behaviors. Because once you see them interact with that carcass, they come to life. It's who they are, and they're tearing at things, they're circling around it, they're enjoying it. You just see a whole different side of who they are. And so my big thing, especially with the pet platter, is it is designed to give your pet a happy meal occasion because you're letting your pet be who they really are.
So would you mind telling us a little bit about the pet platter that you designed? Because I think that is so interesting now that you're talking about it. It almost makes me feel guilty now. I'm feeding my dog from a bowl. But I know you're not meant, you don't mean it that way, but it's just like it's so fascinating. Like this is something we've never thought of. And I think that your product is like, now I'm going to go buy it, first of all, but it's just, I think it also, I don't know how much you think about that, but in terms of like how it affects the digestive system too, when they're just like inhaling everything. And the nervous system, when you're just like, it's done in, like you said, 30 seconds max, someone's eating and then it's done. And it feels almost like, gosh, here I spent like, because I home cook. So here you spend like hours cooking for them and then they're done in like 20 seconds. Right. They should be enjoying it a little bit more. But go ahead. Tell us a little bit about the
We're going to get into, because I don't want people to think it's just for the happiness. You're absolutely right, Sunny. It's about healthy digestion, nutrient absorption. People feel that when they buy these more expensive foods, that their pet is absorbing those nutrients, right? That's not the case. If they eat large amounts that come in too fast, it overwhelms their system, and the digestive juices in the small intestine don't have enough time to break it down. And so good food in, good food out, basically. So when you allow them to eat the way they're meant to, it's actually improving nutrient absorption. It's just one case in point.
Makes sense.
But I'll just quickly go through some of this. Every single element of the pet platter is intentionally designed. And it is all designed from the dog's perspective. Melissa, as you were talking about before, I was amazed when I went back and did a review on how to feed your pet in the journal articles. There's basically nothing in there. It's all focused pretty much on elevated feeding. And that's about it.
Wow.
And when you think of the slow feeders where there's projectiles coming out, what does that do? That hits into their snout, and the inside of their nasal cavity has mucous membrane. And when you're constantly hitting into that snout, it swells on the inside, which becomes painful. And then if food flies into it, it dries out the mucous membrane, and then they can't smell. And if they can't smell, they can't see the world.
Right.
Then
So the big mistake in the industry is we've been designing things. We see a problem, and then we're designing it from the human perspective of they're eating too fast. Let's slow them down. And if I was going to make that, I'm going to think like a human and make that, right? But that's what's so interesting about this.
Well, and the same thing with the lick type mats. You know, people thought, oh, well, this is great. We'll just create all these little mazes with nooks and crannies, and they can't get to the food. Well, think about it. They have the capacity to smell 10,000 times stronger than we do. They have over 100 million scent sites. And so with the lick type mats, they're smelling the food, but their tongue can't fit in there to get the food, which leads to rapid licking, which leads to obsessive compulsive licking, which leads to frustration and aggression. It's sort of like if we were sitting down and trying to eat our dinner, somebody poking us in the nose. Yeah. Would we like it? We'd get frustrated. So the thing that surprised me most of all was there's so much focus on what you feed, but very little on how you feed.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the foundation. But with the pet platter, we have two sizes, but in actuality, they're designed to resemble a carcass. And they're large enough to give the pet control of the carcass. Okay? 360-degree view and movement. And the importance of that is when wolves would kill their prey in the wild, they would circle in both directions before they actually went into the carcass. And the reason for that is they have an extraordinary sensory circuit designed to protect their food resources. Control and their senses help protect them and help them survive in the wild. So by giving them 360-degree view and movement, they know they have control of their carcass. Then the surface of the platter is flat, and the reason for that is to give them a food territory that they can explore, but it serves a more important thing. There are no sides. There's nothing to push up against where they can shovel in a lot of food. So without poking into their snouts, you're slowing not only the amount, but the pace at which they eat, which reduces the probability of bloat, as well as choking and gagging and all those other problems.
That's very interesting, the reducing bloat. So I deal with giant breeds in my practice, and I have giant breeds myself, Mastiffs, and which, and I've had Great Danes, and bloat is a huge, problem. Very scary if it does happen. So that's really interesting to know that can prevent that as well.
Well, and with the Purdue study that was done, it was the largest study of its kind related to elevated feeding. And they found that if you eat from an elevated platform, it increases the probability of bloat 20% among large breeds and 52% among giant breeds. So what we did was to actually do videos to look at what happens with elevated feeding. basically you're making it easier for them to use their lower jaw to push the food up against the side of the bowl, and it acts as a backward conveyor. So you're shoveling more air and more food in at the same time, which leads to
the
bloat.
opposite of what people tell you to do, right?
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most common questions we get on our information site is about elevated feeding. And I'll tell you, about 5 years ago, it was still 50-50 split among veterinarians. But today, I think more and more are realizing that elevated feeding is a part of the problem. So that's definitely changing. But the one thing I can tell you and all of your listeners, if you switch to elevated feeding, or if you are in an elevated feeding situation, once you notice an increase in gas, that means the bloat is building up in the dog's system.
Wow.
That's what we've learned from a lot of the people who have contacted us.
That's really great information to have. Yeah, absolutely. So, you've been in this industry for a lot of years. I'd be curious to know, like, what changes have you seen, or what feels more different today than when you started? Like, are they positive changes? Are they negative? I'm sure there's both, but I would love to hear your insight into that, because that's obviously, we are talking about trends in pet health, and you're at the forefront of all this research and new information that's just fascinating. Would love to hear your insight.
It's an interesting time in pet health care. And I think over the next 20 years, we're going to see absolutely dramatic changes. But let me just highlight a few of the things taking place right now. The first is the perception and probably partial reality of a shortage of veterinarians. Right now, the baby boomers veterinarians are aging and retiring out of the business. But the one interesting thing I found in some of the surveys, burnout. 20% of veterinarians indicate that they're suffering burnout, and 50% of vet techs.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. And I think that's leading to a staffing problem for most veterinary offices. And also 50% of the veterinarians reported that they were unhappy due to pressure and understaffing. So we're seeing sort of this attitudinal change. People come into it for a passion, but there's not enough support for them that's taking place. So I think, everybody has to think about how can we change this to eliminate that pressure and to have better staffing in the offices. Another part of the problem is corporate consolidation. And if you live in an urban area, Chicago, New York, LA, this is really a big phenomenon that's taking place. Right now, corporations, from the surveys I've looked at, own almost half of the vet care market share.
So sad. Yeah.
Which is extraordinary. And they own 1/3 of all general practices.
It's crazy.
And private equity owns 76% of specialty care. So you have this massive change coming in where control of these things are becoming more and more corporate. It's almost like the days of, the mom and pop veterinarian.
No longer.
It's falling by the wayside. The other thing that I found interesting was that fewer than 15% of the corporations put their name on the office doors.
You don't want to see Mars, Mars owning the chocolate company is now taking care of your dog. So in terms of all of this, which is, concern. Bless you. What does that mean for pet parents? We went into it slightly. We had a conversation with a veterinarian that I work for, who happens to be independently owned, but we didn't really go deep into that. But what does that mean for those who may not know what's going on, like in terms of pet care and pet health, and what should you be looking for?
I think people are going to have to be more discriminating. They're going to have to ask more questions of their veterinarians, because I can tell you what we experienced in Chicago. If you notice a change in policy, a change in pricing, a change in access, a change in time that your vet spends with you, all of those things are impacting your visit. And then probably the most important one is the rising costs.
Yeah, and and also I just got a notice for my pet insurance. $70 more a month for one of my dogs. I pay now $600 a month for my 2 dogs, and they're citing basically, the cost of care in your area has gone up, but not my veterinarian because she's independently owned, but everything else has gone up. So now I'm paying for that. So it's almost like you have to think about like, gosh, do I pay $600 a month, or do I just like front the cost in case something's happening, which is sad that we have to think that way, but it's really affecting all areas of pet care, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's why I think people are going to start relying on more sources outside the traditional veterinary practice. It's going to become more and more important. And I think prevention, pet parents are going to start educating themselves more and more, because when you have the price factor coming into play, it's impacting your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the driving force behind it, but prevention is going to be critical.
On that note, do you think pet guardians are more informed today, or are they becoming more overwhelmed by information?
Just as a former pet parent, I am going to get another dog, though. When the timing's right, my little Pippers is gone, but I'm getting there. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed. Where do you go? What are the best sources? And I think all of us are privy to the fact that so much money is coming into the pet industry today, is that you're getting a lot of what I call carpetbaggers, people who come in to make a quick dollar.
Yeah.
But the products and the services that they're giving aren't really to benefit your pet at all. So I think resources that are knowledgeable, that can direct the pet parent to the best resources or recommend products, that's going to become quintessential as we move into the future.
Sounds kind of like the human health industry, right? I mean, there's so many quick fixes and products, and you have to do your own research essentially, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Right. Well, and the reason why physician assistants came into play is because general practitioners don't exist. They represent such a small minority of doctors now that they had to get people to come in and help. Everybody's going into specialties because you really can't, it's harder and harder to make a living in a general practice.
Good point. Absolutely.
So we Sunny, that's a great point. We are paralleling the human health industry as well. We're on perfect parallel paths.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. I want this to be uplifting.
No, it's there's a lot of good stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
and I think you're part of it. You're part of the positive. You're in it for the benefit of the animal. So there's definitely not just negative, but I think it's good, like Melissa said. Like it's informative, and we do need to know both sides so that you can make your own decision about what's right for your pet. So I think that's really, really good that we talk about all of these things that are happening in the industry, and it's not all positive, no matter what industry you're in, right? So,
well, and you know what? it's like anything else. If you understand where it's going, find positive solutions for yourself and your pet. Information allows positive action to take place. And I think if pet parents are demanding more, corporations will have to provide more if they're going to survive in the place, because here comes my corporate action. Corporations listen to the customers. So being proactive in that capacity will definitely have an impact. And I'm not trying to badmouth corporations. I mean, there are a lot of people who want to do the right thing, but it's what we demand that's going to impact how they provide the
I think we
services.
recently saw that with fresh food, where there's more corporations that are coming out with, cooked food products that we would have never have imagined that they would have come in, but they're listening to the consumers, which that's a positive. However you look at it, if you like their food or not, it's a positive that they're listening. And so I know you've talked about battle lines being drawn in the industry. So I'm curious, because we're kind of talking about both sides. So what are these? Where are they being drawn?
Well, it's interesting. There were two major surveys done, one by the AVMA, American Veterinary Medicine Association, and then Mars Healthcare. Okay. And they're sort of taking different perspectives, which shouldn't be surprising at all. According to the Mars Healthcare, they cite a lot of statistics that say there's going to be a major veterinary shortage, and they're predicting that by 2030 there's going to be a need of 55,000 more vets to keep up with the number of pet parents that have pets, which is an astronomical number. In return, the AVMA is saying it's more of a distribution problem. They see sufficient healthcare in the urban areas, but as you push out further and further into the rural areas, that's where the problem is. But they're saying the vet schools are going to be able to keep up with demand. So I think sort of what you're seeing is a battle of, the veterinarians versus the corporate entities, and we'll sort of see where it ends up. I think both bring an element of truth. If you go out to more of the rural areas where I've actually been out there, I'd love to have a rescue one day out west doing this. Healthcare for pets is really a challenge. It's very much a challenge. I can speak to that
personally, especially with large animal veterinarians. I have goats, I have pigs. To get people out here to help me, there's 2 veterinarians that are even willing to come here, and one lives in Jacksonville. I live in the Orlando area. So, we're talking, she's driving 2.5 hours, so it becomes even more expensive. Yeah. But if you have an emergency, that falls on me and my neighbors. We have to figure out as a community how to help, because there's a lack of veterinarians, large animal veterinarians. So it's really affecting, I think, large animals. We're not seeing it as much in the small animals yet, but as you said, more baby boomers start retiring in the rural areas. My veterinarian now is rural. He's independent, and he's in his late 60s. He's looking to retire. So when he's gone, then I go to PetSmart. That's my veterinarian, so it does become, it depends where you live. And I can't imagine going to an urban area again, but it would be really great if they could meet the demand for veterinarians for the rural areas.
Yeah. I think we're going to see some changes. The veterinary community is also going to have to start to rely on outside sources as well to help in the process. So healthcare doesn't become a luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury. It doesn't need to become that way. But, we have to change. More and more people are having pets. In fact, among the younger generation. I'm not part of that.
Hey,
okay?
hey now.
You could have fooled
me. They're having pets instead of children. I mean, that is really a phenomena that is taking place right now. So, as the birth rate goes down, the pet rate is going to increase. And so
The
you see the
dinks,
issue
the dual
going on.
income, no kids. There are a lot of those in my area. And also, I just saw on the news that in China, funnily enough, how they used to want to try to reduce the number of babies that were born. And now they're having the
Females.
opposite problem because the new generation are like, I choose to have a dog. And it was so funny that it's like an international phenomena. But to your point, that is very true. And to that point, the care now is so much more needed because people are really into their pets are treated like children, which I think they should. I don't have human children, so I treat my dogs like my kids. But, to that point, I know we touched on it. I wanted to ask that or get into it a little bit more, but because I think that is at the core of the problem. And Melissa touched on it when we talked about how we feed animals. Like it's more for our convenience than for the pet. And we don't think about it, right? Because something like what I am seeing now in the veterinary hospital that I'm working is that people come in and they love there's no doubt that they love their pets, but they're so used to that quick fix. Like, I just want a pill. He's not feeling well, so I take a pill and he feels better tomorrow. And for us in the holistic world, it's difficult because it doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. And, so I wanted to see, do you think that this convenience culture has changed the care, the way we care for animals, and how is that affecting the industry?
It absolutely has, and that's why I think getting food online has a growing proportion. Anything that's easiest to prepare, all of those things. And one survey that I saw asked people, why do you feed from a bowl? And over 90% said because it's convenient. Right. Nobody ever thought of it. We went from scatter feeding in the earlier times to a bowl. Well, how did that happen? It was the most convenient thing. It wasn't messy. They could contain it, but they're shutting down all the sensory circuit of the dog. So my whole thing, and I think this will be generally true, the more we look at different aspects of our pet's world, the more we look at it from their physiology and their psychology, the better we're going to be able to meet their demands as animals. Because, even though they're family members, we still have to realize there's a wolf inside each and every one of them. And after spending so much time with wildlife professionals, you really come to respect how they are physiologically structured. This is who they are. And even through all these years of evolution, their sensory circuit and their needs and their instincts, they're still operating the same. So the whole notion of feast or famine, okay? If you have a bunch of food, that dog will take in all that food possible. Now, wolves can take up to, an 80 to 100 pound wolf can take into 10 to 20 pounds of meat, basically. Our dogs can no longer do that. If they attempt to do that, bloat is going to occur. And I think sometimes, we have to recognize there's still that similarity, but don't think your dog is identical to a wolf. They just don't have that same capacity. And so looking at who our dogs are becomes really important.
That's excellent. That's an excellent point. Yeah. So we're talking, like you said, we want this to be positive as well, of course, like not just negative. So what gives you the most hope for, about the future of pet health care?
I think with pet parents becoming more involved, they're caring for their pets the way they care for their children pretty much. My daughter always used to say, "You care more about Pip." And I'd say, well, there are reasons for doing that, you know.
So funny.
But I think pet parents are becoming more discerning, but they're willing to learn. And when my late husband and I first came into the pet industry, we were overwhelmed. It was like, oh my God, we didn't know this whole other world existed. And the holistic community, you know, I don't really see it as separate and distinct. I see it merging into mainstream now. It's sort of common sense. When you look at a lot of the things that we recommend, it's not this extraordinary, you know, out of the common sense range. It's sort of like, gee, I never thought about that. Let me look into it. Gee, that makes sense. So I think everybody's attitude is changing slowly. But how we compact and condense the information and offering a delivery service for this information is going to become probably the most critical factor. Because when you start looking things up on the internet, it goes on for an eternity. And for people who don't have time, especially working moms, and they want their pets healthy, you know, but time is a factor. So it's going to be up to the industry to provide information in a more meaningful and seamless way.
Yeah,
to the pet
that's so
parents.
true. Very important and inspiring to think like we can think about that as we're delivering, especially us as health coaches too. And I know a lot of holistic health coaches are listening. And instead of trying, because I was guilty of that initially, like I was like, oh my gosh, I've learned all of this, and I just want to pack it all into 1 hour. And they're going to get so much value, and they're like, you can just see steam coming out of their, you know. You have to meet them where they're at, and like you said, keep in mind that everybody loves their pets. It's just like it's time, and it's not everyone's going down the rabbit holes like we are, because we're fascinated with this, and that's why I think people like you who are doing such important research, it's just such a great, you're such a great resource. So very, very inspiring. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thanks. Well, the one thing I can say is, out of all my years working in different marketplaces, when there are dividing lines and people put up walls, that's when the problems ensue. I think if everybody knocks down their walls and sort of comes together, because we can always learn from one another.
That's...
At my ripe young age, I am still learning things.
Of course, we never stop learning, for sure.
But I would love to share with you, because I think this goes down the prevention route, just some of the things that the Pet Platter will do. I talked about one being nutrient absorption. Okay, slowing down the volume and the amount is so critical to getting that nutrient absorption going. The other thing is the Pet Platter, because all the senses can be involved and the pet actually can explore the food, that becomes very important, because they make food selections much like they did in the wild, like selecting the organ meat. I've seen some wolves who take out organ meat. Some will eat right on the spot a particular organ that they nutritionally need. I've seen others where they line up the different organs and then will eat in a preference. I mean, no feeding style is exactly the same among all of them. But giving them, letting them identify, because they smell in 3D, okay? And you have to allow the different scents to be able to come in so they can identify what it is and to make a selection. So you're actually giving them better control of their feeding territory. The other thing is with digestion, since the nose is involved, the scent is involved. The other thing is hearing. Dogs hear up to over a mile away, and they hear much higher frequencies, up to 65,000 hertz. So the one place you don't want to feed them from is the kitchen corner, because you're blocking their peripheral vision. They can't see if somebody's coming down, and they're hearing all these noises up to a mile away that you're not hearing at all, which increases the cortisol level because they're feeling stress. So by eating off of the pet platter and giving them that control and their ability to move, if their sensory circuit is, sending signals of potential danger, you're reducing the cortisol level, which improves digestion as well as the gut biome. Because chronic stress can lead to leaky
Right.
gut biome.
Yeah. We don't think about that connection, right? I mean, I have a personal question. I mean, a selfish question when you talk, because
Sure.
I actually am guilty of feeding my dog against the wall in the kitchen. It's not a corner necessarily, but she has started to show slight cognitive decline. And I'm wondering if you've had any, sort of experience with that in terms of because then her senses are I've noticed she gets so skittish now because she's all, so when she's eating, what is the best way to feed her? Because I've noticed that sometimes she doesn't finish her food, and I'm not sure if it's because she's full or if it's just she just seems a little weirded out,
Yeah. I don't know your exact environment, but I would definitely pull the feeder away so they can circle. She may be hearing something in the background. Like I had one woman who could not figure out why her pet was refusing to eat. She located the feeder not only in sort of a corner, but right near the washer machine and dryer, and the vibration, the senses that they have in their paws, it was sending warning signals. So she noticed that every time that was on, that's when the problem occurred.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to share with you, we had a little preliminary information come in. I'm actually working on a study with Innovative Pet Lab, and actually testing the reduction of cortisol in an experimental design, which I'm really excited about, because we wanted to demonstrate how you feed impacts that cortisol level. So we'll be coming out with that in the future. And then the other thing, which is so important, a lot of people think their dogs taste their food, through the taste buds in their mouth. They only have 1,700 taste buds versus our 9,000. And part of the reason for that is the wolf primarily ate a meat and fat diet, so there wasn't a lot of need for a more complicated palate. But what happened in the process was they taste their food through their sense of smell. So when you put the food into a bowl, they can't taste it because they can't smell it. They just clomp down because their nose is hitting against the side of the bowl. So taste satisfaction and meal satisfaction come from allowing your pet to explore the surface of the platter. And then the divots here resemble the ends of bones, which promotes positive licking, which increases positive endorphins and relaxes the dog, again, to encourage that reduction of cortisol that could be set off by their sensory circuit. So the pet platter is all about reducing the stress and trigger warnings and allowing them a fear-free meal because they're in control.
Fascinating. And even more important, because we live in such a high-stress world now that, they get stressed from all levels. At least let's give them a peaceful meal, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Exactly. And, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. All we have to do is focus on the physiology and psychology of the pet. So that's why we're so excited. And I will tell you this: for any finicky eater, we have solved the problem. They will eat off of the pet platter. And I often tell this story. One woman came up at one of the conferences we were at, and this woman said, my dog has been hand-fed for 12 years, and she will not eat out of anything. And my husband said, okay, I'm going to give you this platter. Go back to your room tonight. We promise you, your dog will eat from it. And if you're not happy with it, fine, just bring it back, whatever. So she came back the following day, and she goes, damn you.
That's funny.
The dog, who only could be hand-fed for 12 years, and we became friends, and she would follow me to the different conferences that I was presenting at, and she would stand up and say, my dog needed me, and now I feel like my dog doesn't need me, but I know he's happier.
That's
it was
hilarious.
So funny. So, like I said, it all relates to their environment, their control, and being able to use all of their senses. That's what feeding is all about.
I love
great.
this. I love that
I
it's
do
all
too.
from the animal's perspective, first and foremost. I think that's why I'm so drawn to this. But you have the research and the science behind it, which, sometimes people don't listen to me because I'm accused of being too woo-woo. But when you have the science and research to back it, how can you argue that? I mean, it makes sense. And that story about the hand feeding,
Yes.
countless people have told me the story about, my dog will. Now I have a good solution for them, which is incredible.
Yeah. It's great. And, that's the great part of being in this industry is pet parents are so passionate that they want to interact with you. They want to challenge you. And I've developed so many friendships like that. It's wonderful.
Awesome.
It's wonderful.
So before we wrap this up, is there anything else you want to share, Carol?
I did something special for you guys.
Yay.
Okay? The crystal
I like
ball.
those.
Yes. Anything crystal.
Yes.
Melissa goes,
Please.
yeah.
I have to
Please
get
do.
one of those from now on, No, in a lot of my previous corporate work, one of the things that we did was to predict what future marketplaces were going to look like so we could consult with our clients to make sure that they were going into the right direction and preparing for that future. So putting all the pieces together, I am predicting a future healthcare called P cubed. P to the third power. And I'll just briefly go through each of those. The first one is predictive, that we're going to be going into genetic profiling and gene editing.
Wow.
Gene editing has been explored on the human side, although it's still illegal. But what's taking place genetically, you could not believe the advances that are being made. So having a genetic profile of your dog, being able to edit those genes that are potentially problematic, it is in the future. The second P is preventative, and that is collecting the biometric data. One thing I'll share with you, I know a lot of people are talking about the wearable collars, that this can, track a lot of your dog's biometrics. But when I was working with one technology company, I had the great privilege of visiting an MIT lab where there's actually going to be implants.
Wow.
And you will be able to know firsthand, physiologically, what's going on with your dog to provide real-time biometric data. That is not too far
That's
away. And then the third is personalized, and that means individual wellness plans. And given AI now, with the genetic profiling and biometric data, you're going to be able to generate a wellness plan from pup to senior stage.
Fascinating.
That was a big one to drop on us last minute.
Yes,
Carol,
that was.
Like, I have 100 questions brewing in my mind, so obviously we're going to have you back and pick your brain about this.
Yes.
Because I'm sure this is a little controversial to some people, too. I mean...
You know what? All I'm looking at is where the science is currently going. I mean, when I did a lot of work with technology companies as well, I was so amazed at how little we know in terms of the research that's evolving. And it's just not that it's going to happen in everybody's lifetime, but definitely within 50 years or so, you are going to see this. And it'll start off slow, little bits and pieces, and then all of a sudden, the P cubed is going to come into full play. And it's going to change the industry.
Wow. Yeah. That's definitely giving us a lot of things to think
I know,
about.
you can see our brains just like exploding over and over. We're speechless, and that doesn't
That's why
happen.
we're quiet, yeah.
But you know what? All of this still requires care. You know, the actual element of care, the tools are changing, but the need for qualified health care is going to become more important.
Absolutely. No.
So I only did this for you guys.
Oh my goodness, we feel very
this.
special. Thank you, Carol. Appreciate that. Such a fascinating conversation, and I am feeling very inspired now by all of this information, and I hope everyone else who is listening takes away something. Well, what's one thing you'd like listeners to take away from this conversation? I know we have to wrap up because we could talk to you for hours, but you know.
You know, the one thing I'd like to say is eating is the most important part of an animal's day. Hands down. You see the excitement. What I would like pet parents to do is to observe their pet eating from the feeding device that they're currently using. Look at how long they're eating. What's their body language? Do they seem satisfied? Is it a happy experience? Think about how you might change the feeder. But here's the other point. Get your pet engaged in the meal preparation process.
I love that.
Part of this is that psychology. By drawing your pet into meal preparation, it's almost like going on a hunt. You can see the excitement, the adrenaline comes in, and, you know, they start moving around and speaking to you and everything else. The meal preparation part is so important to them and part of the meal satisfaction. Let them engage in that. And this will also make you explore and experience with a lot more different products, because when you see your pet exploring the different types of food and what they go after first, second, and third, all of those things come into play. But you are a part of the pack. You are an important part of the pack. And even going out for walks, it drives me crazy when I see pet parents on their cell phones and their pets are looking back like, did you see what I just did? And the pet parent is oblivious. So you can actually strengthen the bond with your pet by creating this new engagement with meal preparation. So that's what I'd like to share. And may everybody have happiness.
Thank you
for their
so
dog.
much, Carol. That is excellent advice. And, you know, we want to also give you a chance to, where can people find you if they want to learn more about you, follow your work?
Sure. Basically, if you're interested in looking at the pet platter, you can go to Mine, M-I-N-E. The reason we say mine is because it's their feeding territory. minepetplatter.com. And for your listeners, if they put in the whole pack in the code section, they'll get 10% off when they purchase a pet platter. We wanted to extend that courtesy to them. And we're coming out with a new website soon. And I have to give you a sneak peek on this, okay? We will be coming out with, this is for cats and very small dogs. It's in the shape of a fish, and but operates much like the bone platter does for the dogs. And we're really excited about it because cats are going to be able to experience happiness
wonderful.
as well.
I love that. Thank you so much, Carol. I mean, I appreciate any conversation I have with you is always just so interesting and inspiring. And I just thank you so much for coming today and being our guest.
Oh, thank you. And you know what? Kudos to you guys for providing a resource for pet parents to go to.
Thank you.
You know, it's so important, and I appreciate everything you guys do as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Carol.
So,
all right.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa. We're all very excited.
I'm very excited. You go ahead, Sunny.
No. We just want to thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we'll have all of Carol's contact info in the show notes. So, we hope hopefully Carol will agree to a part 2 because we have a lot more to talk about, but we appreciate this conversation so much, and we'll see you next week for another episode of the Whole Pack Podcast. Thanks again. See you soon.
Thank you.
Before we go, we want to remind you that the information shared on the Whole Pack is for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace veterinary medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with your veterinarian before making any changes to your pet's diet, supplements, or healthcare routine. Every animal is unique, and what works for one may not be appropriate for another. We're here to empower you with knowledge, but your vet is your partner in your pet's individual care.